I met a young man named Ethan, who had a twin brother named Oliver. People often confused them, especially if they didn't see each other regularly, because their appearance was almost identical, the same sharp jawlines, piercing eyes, and athletic build. However, it was always clear to me who was who. By the way Ethan's smile lingered a little longer, and the subtle confidence in his gait, I could recognize him in an instant. Maybe it was because I was more attentive, or maybe it was just that love had sharpened my senses. From day one, I noticed countless differences between them. Their voices, facial expressions, and even their movements were different. Perhaps I was so deeply in love with Ethan that I couldn't mistake him for anyone else. To me, he was one of a kind, a man who stood out in every conceivable way. Our relationship was unusual, to say the least. I had always envisioned a typical relationship where two people spend time together, share their thoughts and dreams, and develop a deeper connection with each passing day. But with Ethan, it was different. He came and went on his own terms, leaving me to piece together fragments of our time together, often feeling more like a guest in his life than a true partner. I lived with a group of girlfriends in a cozy apartment, and Ethan would come over twice a week after workouts. He came, often sweaty and exhausted, but his energy was magnetic. He ate, chatted with everyone in the apartment, and relaxed after exertion. My roommates would swoon at his trim body as he casually walked around shirtless, drawing attention to himself. After eating and relaxing, he would doze off and then leave without even saying goodbye. On Fridays, he would come for a couple hours at most, satisfying all his body's desires: food, rest, intimacy, and just as quickly disappear. He always found a dozen reasons why he couldn't stay longer, and I felt devastated. One Friday afternoon, after weeks on the sidelines of life, I decided to visit Ethan at his apartment. When I arrived, he and Oliver were sitting at the table, drinking tea and laughing about how their week had gone. Their connection was obvious, but their conversation kept me on my toes. They were talking about a recent night out where they met a few girls. Ethan, on a whim, went on a second date pretending to be Oliver, and the girl didn't realize she'd been switched. Both found it hilariously clever and laughed so hard they could barely breathe. "Wow, how witty we are," I remarked, unable to hide my irritation. My tone quickly turned harsher when I expressed my frustration at how easily people confused them. Oliver only laughed, smirking smugly, and Ethan waved me off with some vague comment I'd already managed to forget. Discomfort was in the air, but neither seemed to care. A while later, Ethan invited me to a party they were throwing at their house. As his girlfriend, I felt obligated to go. Usually after a couple glasses of wine, Ethan would tell me I'd had enough, insisting that drinking wasn't the same hobby for women as it was for men. His remarks, while annoying, had become routine for me. But this time the dynamic was different. Ethan kept pouring for me, even offering me cognac, and making sure my glass never went empty. It felt intentional, like he wanted to relax me and distract me. Whether it was a deliberate manipulation or an attempt to create a more carefree atmosphere, I couldn't tell, but I felt uneasy. He seemed intent on distracting me. Toward evening, Oliver left the apartment on some business, and the atmosphere changed. I was tipsy when I stumbled into the bedroom and collapsed on the bed. Ethan was busy seeing someone off, his laughter coming faintly from the living room. Half asleep, I heard muffled whispers outside the door, and then silence. The night was dark and still, the air heavy with anxiety. After about 30 minutes, Oliver came into the bedroom and lay down next to me. He began to put his arms around me, his touch uninvited and unsolicited. Shocked, I asked, "What are you doing?" "Nothing," he replied nonchalantly, his tone dismissive. "We always do this on Fridays." Even in my drunken revelry, alarm bells rang in my head, memories of past moments, when Ethan's explanations seemed overly rehearsed, or when Oliver's jokes carried a tinge of something more sinister, surfaced. The doubts I'd ignored were now screaming for attention, folding into a pattern of behavior I could no longer ignore. It wasn't just the situation that was unfolding before my eyes, it was the totality of all the small, disturbing things I was trying to brush aside in my desire to trust Ethan. My love for Ethan had become a twisted puzzle, and this piece broke the picture. My mind raced, piecing together moments that now seemed like clues I had ignored. I felt disgust and rage bubbling inside me, a volatile mixture that threatened to spill out. I didn't say anything. Instead, I let the night unfold, determined to have one last laugh. When it was over, I dressed quickly, every movement spurred by the fire inside me. I rushed to the door, my heart pounding with anger and adrenaline. From the threshold, I shouted, "Thank you. That was even better than with your brother." My words were harsh and deliberate, a final blow aimed at the wounded. I then slammed the door behind me and locked it with the key that was still in the keyhole from the inside. I left them to figure out how to open the door, and their confusion and embarrassment as my parting gift. As I left, the cool night air hit my face, making me realize the reality of what had just happened. The chapter with Ethan and Oliver was over, and while the ending was far from what I'd envisioned, it was exactly what I needed to get myself back. After going through this ordeal, I realized how much I had undermined my self-worth by clinging to a relationship that never gave as much as it took. I realized that love without respect is hollow, and gained a new resolve to never settle for less than I deserve. This experience taught me to trust my instincts and to value myself, even if it means walking away from someone I once cared deeply about.